There has been a nuclear accident in the Soviet Union, and the Soviets have admitted that it happened. The Soviet version is this. One of the atomic reactors at the Chernobyl atomic power plant near the city of Kiev was damaged, and there is speculation in Moscow that people were injured and may have died.
The Chernobyl Reactor 4 meltdown is to date the worst nuclear accident in the world. Death tolls from Chernobyl range from 31 people to as high as 50 people, with most deaths being linked to radiation exposure. The area where Chernobyl plant workers and families once lived is now abandoned, leaving Mother Nature to reclaim the once thriving town. Let's take a quick dive into the Soviet nuclear disaster of the 80s. The Vladimir Lenin power plant, or as it's commonly known today, Chernobyl, is located about 15 kilometers north of Pripyat, the town built to house all the Chernobyl plant workers and their families. Construction of the Chernobyl power plant began on August 15, 1972, and was completed 5 years later on September 26, 1977. Chernobyl was a great accomplishment for the Soviets, as it was the first nuclear power plant built in Soviet Ukraine. The plant housed 4 reactors, all of which were RBMK 1000 reactors, with reactor number 1 and 2 being first-generation RBMKs, and reactor 3 and 4 being second-generation RBMKs. The RBMK reactor was a graphite-moderated pressure tube type reactor. The fuel used was an enriched U-235 uranium dioxide fuel in the form of pellets. The reactor, in simple terms, worked by boiling water which turned to steam as it traveled upwards through the pressure tubes. The steam then turned the turbines, which generated electricity. The water in the system was also used to keep the core from overheating. The RBMK used a graphite as a moderator, which helped slow down the neutrons and also assisted with efficiency and fission. The reactivity of the reactor was controlled using 211 boron carbide control rods. They were tipped with graphite, which, when raised and lowered into the core, they could control the rate of the reactions. The RBMK notably possessed a positive void coefficient, which, during low power levels, it could cause a runaway with the right circumstances. A faulty cooling valve at Reactor 1 remained closed after maintenance, which led to uranium in the tank overheating and eventually rupturing the tank. This accident was not noticed for several hours, which led to the release of radiation through the ventilation stack. Thankfully, no one at the power plant was injured. While we're unsure what happened during this event, we do know Moscow leadership was alerted to Chernobyl being one of the most dangerous power plants in the USSR due to the lack of safety equipment. On April 26, 1986, a test was to be ran which would determine how long the turbines could run should their power supply be cut off. This test had been ran a year prior, but the turbines ran down way too quick. That resulted in a new voltage regulator being designed, and that was the whole purpose of this new Chernobyl test, to test the new voltage regulator design and see if it could handle it. The operators prepared for the test by disabling all the automatic safety mechanisms and reducing the reactor's power level down to 700 megawatts. The reactor dropped to an unexpected 30 megawatts due to a combination of xenon poisoning and many other factors which I won't go into here. The reactor was now thermohydraulically unstable. At 1:03 a.m., the reactor power level was noted at 200 megawatts, and the test was now ready to begin. At 1:23 a.m., the turbine stop valves were closed by the operators, and 4 of the 8 cooling pumps started to slow down. The slower rate of the cooling water and the combination of the water now being warm, it was flowing into the core. It caused steam bubbles, and we can call them voids here. They formed at the very bottom of the reactor core. The steam bubbles caused a runaway, which operators noticed, and they decided to stop the test. The scram button, also known as the AZ5, was pressed. This lowered all the control rods into the core and reduced reactivity. The control rods were inserted into the core, with the graphite tips on them entering first. The graphite tips on the control rods caused such an increase in reactivity in the core, it cracked the control rods and jammed them about a third of the way into the core. Around 3 seconds after the AZ5 was pressed, the cooling water in the core flashed straight into steam, which caused the output to spike from 200 megawatts to over 10,000 megawatts, which was 9 times what the reactor could handle. The steam buildup was now unable to vent, causing a massive steam explosion. This steam explosion lifted the 1,000-ton lid off reactor number 4. Shortly after the massive steam explosion, a second explosion could be heard, which was caused by a buildup of hydrogen inside reactor number 4's core. The second explosion effectively blew the reactor apart, ejecting fuel and structural components in the process. After the reactor number 4 explosion, a large structure was built over the reactor in an effort to contain the radiation. Reactors 1, 2, and 3 continued to operate until their shutdown in the year 2000. Today, reactor number 4 is encased by a large steel and concrete tomb known as a sarcophagus.